Hello, my name is Tamika Walker. Today we're going to talk about tips and tricks for the new family law practitioner. The first trick or tip we're going to talk about this morning is reading the statute. That sounds very basic. However, you will be surprised how many practitioners come into family court without reading the statute. In 2016, the Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act was revised, as well as the Parentage Act. These new statutes have enacted new policies and procedures for how we file certain documents and make certain requests to the court. So it is imperative that new lawyers read the statute, and I would encourage you to reread the statute before going into court. It is also important that you read case law so that you can familiarize yourself with what the appellate courts have done and have stated about specific issues. Finally, it's very important that you look at your local court rules before appearing in a certain jurisdiction. Every circuit has different rules as it relates to how they want things filed, what needs to go on the court file, and what their rules are as it relates to how you appear in front of judges. So make sure you brush up on that before you appear in a new circuit. Our next tip is about file preparation. It's imperative when you take on a new family case to have a very detailed file. This includes all of your pleadings and all of your orders. Many times when you take on a family case, you may not be the attorney that files a petition for dissolution of marriage or the initial petition for allocation of parental responsibilities. So it's important for you not only to review the court file, but ensure you have copies of all of the pleadings and orders prepared. Make sure that you know what has happened during the case and get the orders that correspond with what has happened. Your client may tell you that the judge made a ruling on child support, but you don't have the copy of the order to ensure that your client is paying the appropriate amount. So it's important that you get those orders initially when you take on that new client. Some other important tips are getting to court early. That will help you to familiarize yourself with the courtroom or courtrooms in which you have to appear, and also to get a lay of the land in terms of how this judge operates their courtroom. Every courtroom is different. Every courthouse is different. So it's imperative that you get there early. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Listen and ask questions. Don't be afraid to talk to some of the other attorneys in the courtroom. I know as a new lawyer, we don't always like to ask questions or make it appear as if we don't know what we're doing. But sometimes it's very helpful to ask the attorneys who normally practice in those courtrooms, what's happening? How can I do this better? And also, what's the courtroom procedure? That will make things much smoother for you and much smoother for your client when you appear in front of the judge. Our next tip is about preparation. Consider preparing your court orders before you get to court. This way you appear professional, prepared, and ready to go in front of your judge. Our next tip is regarding client management. Make sure that you are billing monthly, that you are tracking your receivables, and that you make sure that you know who is paying and who isn't, and withdraw from your client in an effective manner if they are not paying their bills appropriately. Our next tip is to calendar appropriately. You are not superhuman. You cannot be in 2 or 3 courthouses at one time. So make sure that your calendar is up to date and accurate when you're setting court dates, and also make it realistic for yourself so that you can appear on all of your cases, you can be professional, and your clients feel that they are being taken care of. Communication is key when you're handling family law cases. As most of you know, or you will know very soon as a new practitioner, family law involves meeting clients' needs who are experiencing extremely stressful times. It is imperative that you keep up with your telephone messages, that you email or phone your client, or whatever form of communication you and your client choose to use, but that you communicate with your client effectively and efficiently. Your clients deserve to get information. They deserve to know what's going on and to know where their cases are going. So it's imperative that you take the time to return phone calls, speak with your client, send letters to your client, and keep them up to date as to what's happening on their case. Also, when it comes to communication, communicate with your opposing counsel. I realize that many times you feel that they're your enemy, but in reality, family court is a court of equity, and we must help people to resolve their problems. And one of the best ways to do that is to talk to the opposing counsel, see how far apart you are, and see how close you can get to a resolution without need for a trial. Don't assume anything. Ask questions. Ask your client questions. Ask the opposing counsel questions. Ask yourself questions if you need to, but try to figure out what the issues are clearly. Not what you think they are, but what they are, by asking all of the people the appropriate questions that need to be asked to formulate your plan of action. Our final tip of the day is probably the most important tip that I can ever give you. And that tip is, don't take on your client's problems. You are not your client. You didn't make their choices. You didn't have their children. You didn't create this situation. Your job is to navigate your client through this difficult time and try to get them through this situation as unscathed as possible. Many attorneys get clouded judgment and they start to behave in the same manner that their client behaves because they've taken on the client situation and made it their own. Your client is paying you for objective, reasonable advice. So don't take on their problems. Be the lawyer. Advise your client to the best of your ability. Represent your client zealously. And do what you need to do to help them to resolve their case. Remember, your job is to problem solve and work it out if you can. And if you can't work it out and come to an agreement, obviously a trial is necessary. But I would advise you, don't spend your trial time trying to avenge for your client. Because as we all know, the court's job is not to make a decision based on the emotion or who's angry or whose problem it is. It's the court's job to make a decision based on the evidence and the information in the fairest way possible. Family law is very difficult. It is a grueling practice, but I would encourage anyone who wants to practice family law to start with the statute, start with the local rules, read the case law, find a mentor and ask questions, and don't forget, the ISBA has fabulous resources both in person and on their website to help you. Have a great day.